Today's learning is sponsored by David and Judy Marwick in memory of his mother Claire S. Marwick on her first yard site, Chanahinda Bat Shmuel. To sponsor a day of learning, send me an email or go to mishnah.co/support.
Okay, we're on Eruvin Perichet, Mishnah Bet, second Mishnah in the 8th chapter of Eruvin. We're in the middle of talking about an eruv Techumin, how we do a shituf Techumin. So the Mishnah says, Kamahu shi'uro, how much food? Remember we said, let's go back to our original, let me see if I can find our original picture, just so to illustrate. Remember we said, right, there's a 2,000 amma area outside of, let's assume it's only outside of Yad Binyamin, right? 2,000 amma outside Yad Binyamin. So if I want to get to, let's say I have a shiur here in New Gadera, and I want to be able to walk, so I need to place my shvita kind of right here in Chavetz Chaim. And then as we know, I'm able to move, I'm not going to move that. I'm able to move the center of my 4,000 amot in that direction. Therefore, my shvita is in this way. So we said in order to do that, I have to place food here. And we said it could be any kind of food. Now we want to know, how much food does it have to be? Kamahu shi'uru, how much? Mazon shtei seudot l'chol echad. For each individual that is having shvita there, it has to be enough food for 2 seudot. How much is that? We're going to see in 1 second. Mizono l'chol v'lo l'shabati Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Meir says it's a weekday meal and not a Shabbat meal. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, no. Rabbi Yehuda says Shabbat v'lo l'chol. It should be a Shabbat meal, not a weekday meal, i.e. the amount of bread that a person would eat. I think they had no idea how much challah we consume, but nonetheless, both of them have the intention of being makil, of being lenient. What does that mean? Look at the Bartuner for a second. Rabbi Meir, who said that it's a Shabbat meal, it's a weekday meal. Rabbi Meir said weekday meal. Rabbi Meir said Shabbat achil inish tvei, a person eats more. Mishum debasim tafshilei, because his food is tastier. Tam Shabbat. Rabbi Yehuda says no. Since on Shabbat you're going to eat more meals, you don't eat that much in every meal. I don't know. What I know about the way we eat nowadays, Rabbi Meir is clearly right. Anyway, they both want to be lahakel. They want to minimize the amount of food you have to put out in order to make your shvita. Rabbi Yochanan ben Baruka Omer. So how much is this? How much is this amount? Mikikar bepundion me'arba se'in besela. So how big does this bread have to be? A bread that's purchased for a pundion, that's a denomination, purchased the amount of a pundion, i.e. the bread, the size of a loaf, with the flour purchased from a pundion, me'arba se'in besela. When 4 sa'ah of grain are purchased with a sela. In order to understand this, you have to have a chart. Okay, so it happens to be that I have this is the amazing book that I've been using before now. Okay, so how much is a kikar and how much is a pundion? They had a denomination called a sela. In every sela there were 4 dinar. I'm going to say this a little bit slower. In every dinar there were 6 ma'ah, okay, or 12 pundion. Each dinar had 12 pundion. Every sela had 24 ma'ah, or 48 pundion. It feels like it's Harry Potter money, but, that's what it was. 4 dinar to a sela, 24 ma'ah to a sela, 48 pundion to a sela. Okay? Every sa'ah, so these are, I don't think, the liquid measurements, weight measurements, volume measurements. I never really understood the difference between the two. Every sa'ah was divided into 6 kab. There were 6 kab in a sa'ah. So just like there are 6 kab in a sa'ah, there are 6 ma'ah in a dinar. So now we're talking about if you buy a loaf. Let's find the loaf, he said. You bought a loaf that's bought with a pundion. Remember, a pundion is 1/12 of a dinar. So how much, when arba sa'in are bought besela. So when I buy a sela, I buy 4 sa'ah. So if I have a sela worth of money, I can buy 4 sa'ah. Which means if I buy a sela of money, I can buy 6 sa'ah to a kab. I can buy 24 kab. How much is a pundion? A pundion is 1/48 of that amount. So therefore, how much can I buy with the pundion? It's a loaf. Let me move me. It's a loaf the size of a flour of a chatzi kab. That's the amount, half a kab, and it's a significant size loaf. That's the size of a loaf that you need, according to Rabbi Yochanan ben Baroka. Kikar bepundion, a loaf bought for the amount of a pundion. When arba'a sa'in, you buy arba sa'in with a seller. Let's look at the Bartanura for 1 second. The Bartanura says, Hare, so we get from this, kikar nikar b'shuk b'pundion, how big is the kikar? Is chatzi kav. That's a half a kav, and that's the half a kav that we saw in our picture. This is the chatzi kav. But the Gemara adds something else. But the store owner, he's got to bake, he's got to grind, he's got to make money. Nimtza, so it turns out, how much is the kikar in the end? Revakav, it turns out that this loaf is a fourth of a kav. Shehem sheish beitzim. It's the size of 6 eggs. So that's the kikar, that's the loaf, that's 6 beitzim, because why a kav is 24 beitzim. Okay? And vehem shiur shtei seudot shel eruv, the divrei Rabbi Yochanan ben Baroka. So this kikar is 6 beitzim. The shiur shtei seudot is a loaf that's 6 kibeya. We've heard that before. Right? Let's go now to Rabbi Shimon. Rabbi Shimon says, shtei yadot lekikar mishalosh lakav. It's not, so we had 6 beitzim until now. Rabbi Shimon says, no, don't take the kav and don't divide it into half and then a quarter of that, but rather take the kav and bake it into 3. So therefore, the kav, remember, was 24, half a kav was 12. The kav, so each loaf is 8. But then he says, let's go back to the Mishnah. He says, shtei yadot lekikar mishalosh lekav. Shtei yadot means, let's say I cut it, I only take 2/3 of that loaf. So I take that, here's this loaf. I have this loaf, I took the kav and made it into 3 loaves. And now 2/3 of that loaf, 1 loaf is 8 kibbetzim, and 2/3 of that is 5 1/3. 5 1/3. That's pretty much what he holds. That's what the Bartanura says. The Bartanura says, Rabbi Shimon mima'et b'shir. He doesn't say it's sheish kibbetzim. Okay? Rather, v'omer shedai la'arei b'shtei yadot shel kikar. It's enough to make an eruv with 2/3 of a loaf of 3 kikarot lakav. The kikar shalem shel shmona beitzim hu shlishit akav. So the loaf is 8 beitzim. U'shtei yadotea ha'em 5 beitzim. 2/3 of it is 5 beitzim yoter, 5 1/3. So the machloket in the end, how big the loaf must be, Rabbi Yochanan ben Baruch says 6 kibbetzim, okay, and Rabbi Shimon says 5 1/3 kibbetzim. But more than that, chetzia lebayit hamenuga, half of this kikar, we're going to see, half of a kikar is lebayit hamenuga, in order to become tameh. If you're in a bayit hamenuga, a house that's tameh, has sarat, the chetzia, and half of that, half, a quarter of that loaf, Livsol et hagviyah, to make a body tameh. What in the world is going on here? Let's see in a second. It says stam Mishnah. Chatzi kikar shalem. Remember we talked about how big is this kikar shalem. So according to Rabbi Yochanan, the second opinion, Rabbi Shimon, you take the kav and divide it into 3. According to the first opinion, you take the chatzi, you divide it into a quarter. You have a quarter kav. You divide it into 4. So is it 8 kibbetzim or is it 6 kibbetzim? How big is that loaf? So whatever chatzi kikar shalem sheshia rubo, half of that measurement, whether it's 8 or 6, i.e. 4 and 3, bein lamar, hu shi'ur l'shihiyat bayit hamenuga. This is the amount of time it will take to stay in a bayit hamenuga. Sha'anichlas l'bayit sheyesh bo neged tzarat. If you walk into a house that has tzarat in it, afal pi shehu tamei miyad. So the person who walks into the bayit hamenuga is tamei immediately. But Eino ta'un kibus begadim. When does he have to put his clothes in the mikvah? That's what kibus begadim, wash his clothes. Doesn't mean they're dirty. When does he have to tovel his clothes? Ad sheyeshaheh kedei achila. So only if you stayed in the house kedei achila, the amount of time it takes to eat. Eat what? How much? So the answer is chatzi kikar, half of a loaf. How big of a loaf? Depends who you are. According to one opinion, 8 beitzim, half of that is 4. According to another, the loaf is 6 beitzim, half is 3. And he says, this is chetzia. Okay, this is pras de bekule talmuda. Kedei achilat pras. You might have heard that. The pras is half a loaf. You might have heard that term. I'm gonna go back and write it down for you, this term, because it really appears a lot in Shas. I'm gonna write it. It's a term that says, oops. The term is kedei achilat pras. You'll see that over and over and over again. This is the pras, half a loaf. So for example, when a person washes his tzilat yadayim, he must eat a kazayid in kedei achilat pras. In order for his amotzi bracha to be effective, he has to eat a kazayid in the time it would take him to eat a loaf of 3 kibbetzim. Okay, that's 9 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever it is. That's the pras. So how much is that? Chatzi, half of a kikar lebayit hamenuga. In order to have to wash your clothes, to tover your clothes, to make them tameh if you stay in the bayit hamenuga, the amount it would take you to eat a pras. The chatzi chetzia, and half of that, a quarter of the kikar, livsol et hagviyah. Livsol et hagviyah means that if a person eats half tameh food, then his whole body becomes tameh. Da ochel achalim tameim kechatzi pras. If you eat a half of a pras of tameh food, nifsal gufo midirabanan le'echol b'truma. Then your body is pasul dirabanan. You can no longer eat truma. How much is that? So it's either 1.5 according to Rabbi Yochanan ben Baroka eggs, or 2. Remember, because his was 8, a quarter of that is 2. Beisim Rabbi Shimon. I hope this wasn't too complicated. I know it went very long, but it's a pretty complicated discussion. I hope I was able to explain it in a way that was understandable to you. Of course, if you have comments or questions, email me, or don't. I'm happy if you do. We'll dedicate the learning to memory of my father, Rav Simcha ben Yitzchak Kalman. Have a good day.